There are only 3 countries in the world where basketball is clearly above all the other sports. In this video, I'll go through all of them and explain why that's the case. First things first, it's no secret that basketball is not as popular as other sports worldwide. I've looked on countless websites and found one saying it's the 7th most popular sport in the world, another claim it's the 3rd, this one says it's 9th, and this one has basketball as low as 15th. After looking at these top 10s of sports popularity, one thing is clear. There is no data I could rely on, which makes this video slightly more difficult, as determining whether basketball is the most popular sport within a country won't be as simple as looking up some numbers. I'll have to dig deeper, but there's another thing that's clear. Football is king, and for basketball to be #1 in a country is really unique. I guess I wouldn't be making this video if I wasn't from one of those countries, so here's our first basketball-loving nation, Lithuania. If you asked anyone in Lithuania what's the most popular sport there would be no debate. It's basketball. In fact, we go as far as to call it our second religion, and I would argue sometimes it feels more like the first. In Lithuania, almost everybody, from children to your grandmother, has either played basketball, watches it, or at least knows most of the athletes and teams. I mean, if I just called my grandma right now and asked her about the last EuroLeague round, she would probably give me a 5-minute monologue on it. While most people tune in to watch just the national team, hardcore fans, of which there are hundreds of thousands, not only follow the local teams, but take their time to watch other EuroLeague teams' games or follow what's happening in the NBA. In terms of playing the actual game, most Lithuanians have at least tried going to basketball practices or have played it outside in their childhood. But how did basketball surpass football and other sports in Lithuania? Well, largely it's due to the historical and cultural impact. First, basketball was introduced in the 1920s when the locals became interested in this new game from the United States. Then it really bloomed when American Lithuanians came over to their homeland and not only started teaching their countrymen how the game is played, but also played for the national team too. That resulted in early international success in the 1930s, which really kickstarted the love for the game in Lithuania. That love deepened under Soviet occupation, as Žalgiris vs CSKA Moscow games became a way to express Lithuanian identity. And finally, the post-independence era is highlighted by medals in the Olympics, Eurobaskets, and World Cups. Of course, it also comes down to the state funding for the sport, as basketball has had the most support from the government for decades. In turn, that enabled multiple basketball schools and raising unproportional amounts of highest level players for a country of 3 million people. Next up, we have another basketball crazy nation, the Philippines. While they cannot compare to Lithuania in terms of success, the love for basketball there is just as impressive.
But he's filling it again. Another one, fourth. Oh, baby! I cannot believe what we're seeing, Coach. Jordan Clarkson.
Once again, it's one of the 2 countries where there is no doubt what's the most popular sport, as basketball is really more than a game. It's a vital part of their communities. Outdoor basketball courts are all over the Philippines, and they're not just always busy, but often have spectators watching some local 3-on-3 pickup game. To me, this fact is the most mind-blowing. Over 60% of Filipinos are interested in the NBA, which makes them the top audience outside of the US. An example to illustrate this. Each game of the 2021 NBA Finals averaged 8.4 million unique viewers from the Philippines. Just think about it, 8.5 million people watched a final series between 2 teams with no Filipino players happening across the Pacific Ocean at 8 a.m. in the morning. Another interesting fact is that Filipinos are on average 6 centimeters shorter than the worldwide average, but despite this, the nation fell in love with the sport with the tallest athletes. It does reflect on the results of Gilas Pilipinas, that's the nickname of their national team, who haven't really had much success internationally outside of FIBA Asia. Regardless, in 1975, their domestic league PBA became the first professional basketball league in Asia. It has had a significant following and produced local legends who then inspired generations of Filipinos to take up basketball. Plus, there were a few NBA names who played there too, with Al Thornton and Cedric Ceballos being the most notable ones. once. But okay, that's jumping ahead a bit. How did basketball get to the Philippines in the first place? In the early 1900s, American teachers known as Thomasites had basketball as a part of the new public education system. The sport's simplicity and minimal needs for equipment made it very accessible, hence the sport grew really quickly, resulting in 20th century success in FIBA Asia tournaments, thousands of courts populated throughout the Philippines, and the most basketball fans in a single country. Now, before I reveal the final country on this list, just a quick reminder to subscribe to our channel for a chance to win this Giannis Antetokounmpo jersey. Once we hit 150,000 subs, we'll do a random draw and one of you will get that jersey sent right to your home. Okay, so the Philippines, Lithuania, that was easy work. Everyone knows these two countries clearly have basketball over all the other sports. Now, the last country is probably the most debatable one, but I will clear all the uncertainty here. That country is Lebanon. I say it's not clear because from all the information available online, a lot of sources still claim that football is their #1 sport, but that's not what Lebanese basketball fans think. In fact, we got so much backlash on our Instagram reel where I said that Lebanon wasn't a basketball first nation.
Okay, I heard some rumors that Lebanon is really obsessed about basketball, right?
Perhaps not in this list. We've got video responses, hundreds of comments, so I spoke with a local expert on the matter, Nadim Al-Kak.
Right now, basketball is definitely the most popular sport. In the past, there was some debate between it and football. Over recent years, the level of football has just gone down, whereas basketball has accumulated pretty good successes on the continental level and on the international stage, so it has now clearly become the #1 sport in the country.
From our conversation, I gathered that basketball culture is very similar to the one in the Philippines. People are very passionate about the sport, also have a huge interest in the NBA since the 90s, and I was pleasantly surprised that EuroLeague is actually gaining more and more traction in the past decade. Lebanese really love supporting their local clubs, with their most successful one, Al Riyadi, filling up a 10,000-seat arena for their games, which is really impressive when considering half of the EuroLeague teams do not. And just a fun fact I'm sure you didn't know, after his unsuccessful NBA start with the Kings, Hassan Whiteside actually moved to play overseas, and one of the clubs he played for was Al Mutahed in Lebanon. Otherwise, Lebanon has been successful on the international stage too, as their national team were runners-up to Australia in the 2022 Asia Cup. When it comes to how basketball was introduced, we once again have to look at the Americans. In the 1920s, Christian missionaries from the US came over and established Lebanon's first ever local basketball club. The sport kept growing, a federation was established, and in the mid-20th century, more clubs were created. When I asked Nadim what was the turning point for basketball to become more popular than football, he had this to say.
I think it was after Lebanon beat France in 2006 at the World Cup, then we beat Canada in 2010 at the World Cup, and this is considered our golden generation. So a lot of the generation that grew up watching these players and who are now in, their 20s, 30s, this generation is the one that really views basketball as the #1 sport.
Yeah, I completely missed out on those results, but for a country of about 5 million people and young basketball traditions, that is still really impressive. Regardless, Nadim assured me that if there was any doubt what's the most popular sport in Lebanon, basketball sits on the throne and is there to stay. Okay, now I can imagine some of you guys from Greece, Serbia, Latvia, Estonia, Iran, or potentially even China typing in, "Where is my country?" But let me quickly go through all of them. My fellow Greeks, I'm sorry, but there's not much debate. Football is still king in your country. With Serbia, it's a bit more tricky because if I asked a basketball fan, he would tell me it's b-ball, but if I asked a football fan, he would definitely say football. Anyways, the numbers on social media, general viewing of the sport is still better in football, and as I concluded in my video on Serbian basketball, Serbians care about winning more than they care about any specific sport. Latvia, although your country is on the rise in basketball, ice hockey is by far a more popular sport. You could make an argument for Estonia, but it's really not clear, and since they haven't been successful in any sport in particular, I don't think Estonia makes the cut. In Iran, it's still more about football, wrestling, and volleyball. And finally, China, even though they do have a huge viewership when it comes to the NBA, table tennis is still considered their national sport with an estimated 300 100 million players total. So there it is, 3 countries where basketball is clearly the #1 sport: Lithuania, the Philippines, and Lebanon. I would love to hear your opinions on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with this short list, or would you argue otherwise? As always, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel, and check out this video on how naturalization is ruining FIBA basketball.